Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and let's make a little girl skirt. We're going to need a piece of elastic, 1 yard of fabric, and maybe an hour of time. To start with, we are going to need 1 yard of fabric, and the fabric needs to look reversible. Some fabric, even if it's not reversible, can look at a distance. For example, this seersucker sort of looks the same. There is a wrong and a right, but from a distance you're never going to see it. And 1 piece of an elastic. This elastic needs to fit the waist, subtracting 2 inches. If you don't subtract anything, there's not enough strength for it to stay up. So here's the fold of the fabric, and we need to straighten the 2 edges. And it's best if you trim off that seam allowance because it can shrink different than the rest of the fabric. So if you cut it off, and then you're going to stitch your seam right along this edge and finish that edge any way you want. You can put a zigzag or you can put a serge stitch. That seam is going to be a back seam, so you can press it to whatever side you want. The next we're going to put hems, and we're going to put a hem on both sides. I like to take my hem and turn it 1/4 inch and then stitch it up 2 inches and stitch all the way along that top. You're going to do that, and the seam allowance is going to be to the inside. So here's the hem on the one side. So this is the wrong side, so the hem has come up. So this will be the finished edge. We're going to hem the other side, but on this hem we're going to stitch it the wrong side, which means you will see a little bit of this center back in the hem. So if I'm going to turn it the 1/4 inch and then the 2 inches up, that little edge sticking out. We now have one big tube with the hem going in one direction and the hem going in the other direction. We need to take this and fold it in half. You're going to want the right side of the fabric out. When you fold that tube in half, you're going to have both hems on one edge, and they're both going to be in the finished position. Overlap that top piece just about 1/4 inch over top of that seam. Line up that back edge and just put a couple of pins to hold it. Still have that big tube, the right side is out, and that hem is overlapping the other hem, and the back seam is lined up. And smooth all of the fabric up to the top, and you're going to have a big fold right along this edge. Now I can take those pins and transfer them up to the top. Now along this fold, stitch down all the way around 1/2 inch, and that's going to hold those layers together. We're going to need to do 1 more row of stitching around the top, and that's going to make a casing that the elastic is going to fit through. So depending on how wide your elastic is will depend on how big this casing is. My elastic is 3/4 inch, so I'm going to do an inch casing. So I'm going to stitch an inch from that line down. I'm going to stitch all the way, but when I get to the back, I'm going to leave a little opening because I'm going to need to put that elastic through. You're now going to be able to put that elastic through the casing. So you'll be able to open up that skirt and go right through that hole that you left right there and put the elastic around. When both the ends are out, you can stitch that elastic together. Now you can just finish stitching that little edge. And the skirt is done. So it looks like a double layered skirt by doing the hem in one direction on one end and the other direction on the other end. When you fold them in half, both the hems are in the right position. And you have this double looking hem. The only thing that you're going to see is that little bit of that seam allowance in that back seam. And if it's something that's very noticeable, you can put a couple of buttons or a bow, anything to cover that area up. You can wear the skirt pretty much in any direction. Depending on how long your fabric is and how big your hem is will determine the length of the skirt. And in this case, the skirt is 16 inches. Quick, easy, and done. The whole key is finding a fabric that looks great from both sides. I do hope you give it a try, and as always, thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.